In this video, I will show you 3 of my favorite techniques to create a glide bass, which sounds really amazing. So stick to the end because every technique has its own benefits and its own secrets, and you will be able to make some amazing pitch bend basses. So everything starts with a normal bass line. Before you even think about doing crazy bass lines, crazy glide bass lines or something else, you should always make sure that your initial bass line is top notch, so that you have the best bass line you can get, that it has a good relationship with the kick, that everything sits nice and tight in the basics. Once we have that, I have like a kick here and I have a bass line here, and usually I also bounce my bass lines to audio like this here. So that's something you will need to do in the end with your bassline and the glide bass as well, just to mention it, or you can do it and it will usually improve your bassline. So there's nothing you need to do in music. Anyways, once we have this bassline and the kick, what I want to do is I want to duplicate this channel so that I have a copy which I just have for doing like crazy bass stuff, because that makes it easier to change parameters. And one parameter I want to show you, for example, which I have changed here in this bass line, is the decay here. And why I have this huge decay. So as you know from my ADSR tutorial, which I will link up here, we have those 4 parameters here, which are all triggered once we hit the MIDI note. And what we want to avoid if we have long bass notes, for example, I put a note here which has the length of 2 notes, that our amplitude envelope kind of like dies off before the note has finished. So that's something you really need to make sure. I mean, you can do this in your initial bass line here, you can do this in the copy. I find it like a little bit easier if you have a second channel. I mean, it comes with a trade-off as well. So whenever you decide that your original bass line wasn't that good and you want to change parameters, then you need to change it here as well. But the benefit of flexibility, I think, outweighs the disadvantages. So once we have created our perfect bassline and kick and we duplicated this, then we can start mangling with the settings. And the first one, as mentioned, is the ADSR envelope, but there's other settings which are really influencing the glide of the bass a lot. If you like this video so far, then please hit the thumbs up. That helps me to see which videos you are interested so that I can produce more videos like that. But let's look at a few examples. So I prepared 3 different ways how we can glide or bend our bass, which can have like an equal sound, but it's like a little bit different technique. And you have with each technique opportunities which you don't have with the other one. And also it's a bit to taste what you like more and what you can work best with. This side is really important if we use a technique, which I will show you in a second, when we use 2 notes. So whenever we're using 2 notes, we need to have mono legato. This basically enables us to play 2 notes without stacking them. So we are not polyphonic. So that does mean if we play like a C and a D, it's not playing the C and the D at the same time. That's important for the glide bass. Also the Portamento time, it will basically determine how fast we are gliding between those notes. So the first technique is this one, and it sounds like this. And if we look here into the MIDI, I have placed 2 notes. They are 1 octave apart, but you can use, of course, any distance you like. And the important thing is that you have an overlap here. I think it doesn't really matter how much that overlap is, at least you need some overlap. So when I change this, it doesn't do much to the sound change. I'm not 100% sure if that's true if you mangle a lot with the settings, but here I don't hear a difference. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, or if you haven't hit the bell icon when you subscribe, because that bell icon is really important, because I will upload a lot more tutorials about basses and kicks and other stuff in the future, and you don't want to miss those if you want to improve your production. So make sure that bell is activated. So check it now, activate it, and then you don't miss any of my future videos. The thing what we want to tweak here is the Portamento time. So the semitone bend doesn't matter here because the bend is only if we use the pitch bend wheel. While if we have 2 notes, the main thing we need to change here is the Portamento time. And I think the easiest thing is if you just automate this. So for example, with pressing B, we have this pen, and then you can just listen while playing which is the best time. So that would be very fast. Here it's quite too slow. It already, I think it doesn't really finish it. That would be actually the moment to test if the longer notes really matter a lot. But I found something like between maybe like 10 and 20 is usually really good. let's settle here. Why I do want to automate this? Because maybe I want to do different glides in the future here in my progression. And then I can change this time depending on the two notes so that I always find the perfect glide for those note combinations. So the second technique is quite similar to the first one, but instead of having two notes, we bend down the scale. So I would place them still on the grid, or at least leave the first note long enough so that you have a nice click of the bass, and then you can distribute a few more notes and it will glide through that notes. I think it's not very different from the other technique, so I prefer this for simplicity, but the same is true here. We just need the Portamento time. And of course, as we have multiple notes, you could also curve this so that maybe this notes bend slower and this notes bend faster, which I think is pretty cool. So that I would say is the plus on this technique here. You are a Psytrance beginner and you're struggling with your production, then I have a new course for you. I will teach it this time and it's dedicated especially for beginners. So you can still join as an intermediate, but the main thing about this course is that it will be really easy. So I will put myself in the shoes of a beginner. So we'll make it like very easy to follow step by step, very small steps so that you can follow along. And I will go through the creation of a whole track. So we will create a track together in this course. And if you want to take part in this, you can register on my homepage, which you will find up here in the description box, and in the end of the video there's like a little yellow box which you can click on, and this leads you to a homepage where you can enter your email address. And because this course is partly live, I will have limited seats. So if you want to take part in this, then register on that homepage and I will send out emails soon. So for all the guys who haven't gotten the emails, I did get your registrations. It's just I had to decide on a date. So it will be 1st of November and I will send out emails in October about how to finally then take part in this course. But if you want to be on that list, then you need to register now, because as I said, it will be only limited seats. So please register now, then I can notify you when it starts and what the conditions are and what you get and all the important information about it. And I have a third technique which I personally prefer the most, because for me it's the easiest. Everything is more or less in one control. In this technique we are really bending it, so it's not like gliding, it's more like a bend, but the sound is more or less the same. What I want to show you is the glide range. Now we are bending up 4 semitones and we're bending down 12 semitones. This is only important if we use the pitch bend here, so this wheel over here. So if we go to the second tab here and we go here in the MIDI controller pitch bend, then we are drawing a bending curve. And as we are here also an octave apart, I want to go down an octave. Of course, you're free to go down whatever you want, but I want to have like the same distance as in the previous examples here now. Here we need to set up the range. So that's really important that we set exactly like 12 semitones here if we want to bend an octave, because that will help us then if we go in here and look at our bending curve, that this point down here is exactly 1 octave. I have a few more things which I think work out really well for my pitch bend. So the first thing is I leave some space in the beginning. I mean, that's up to you, but I find it sounds better. So have a comparison when I move this more frontal. I think you have a little bit more bend time, which is nice, but it also bends over the click of the bass, which I don't find so cool. I think it sounds very sloppy, and even if we adjust this, it's because the click of the bass gets kind of destroyed if we bend over that, in my opinion. What I tend to do is I leave a little bit of space, so if you hold command you can move it freely. Just make sure that you land on 0 again, and if we have a little bit of space, it usually sounds better. The same applies here for the end. I'll leave a little bit here in the end so that maybe we have like 1 cycle or something of the bass wave really not completely bending down. but you always need to listen what sounds best. Then I have two more little tricks. So the first one is I add like a little zero here. I don't know if that Ableton bug still exists, but I had it in previous versions that if you have bends and you play them, then sometimes it just starts like in the middle of the bend because maybe we stopped the playhead here. And this helps to kind of like reset to zero. I don't know why it didn't otherwise, but this bug existed and I'm not sure if it still exists, but it helps. The same here. I tend to bend this up, but notice there's still the release of that MIDI and I want to be sure that I don't kind of like sweep up in the end again. So leave some space maybe so that you have a little bit space for the release of the note if that is influenced. I didn't test that, but just to be sure, that can help to make it a little bit more round. If you want to learn more about basslines, I have a full playlist up here which you can watch next with bassline tutorials so that you can create an amazing bass which you can then turn into a glide bass or pitch bend bass.